Stephanie White moves in for a fist bump, but Caitlin Clark rejects the gesture entirely. Clark refuses the interaction, meeting the coach's gaze with an icy, direct look. She can't even acknowledge her. You are witnessing the precise moment a professional bond disintegrates on live television. The tragedy is that everyone watching anticipated this fallout, aside from the person left awkwardly waiting with her hand out. You know that specific type of relationship, don't you? You have friends, perhaps someone in a partnership, who fundamentally change the moment they get involved. Everything shifts about them. They start behaving differently, displaying a newfound volatility. They become increasingly erratic, prone to emotional outbursts, and simply aren't themselves anymore. We've all seen this pattern play out. A friend enters a new dynamic, and suddenly the spark in their eyes vanishes, almost overnight. They lose their familiar personality and become constantly on edge. They turn defensive, spinning bizarre justifications for treatment they would have never stood for in the past. Initially, everything seems perfect, like a blissful honeymoon. They claim it is the greatest thing to ever happen to them. They put on a brave face for the media, yet their posture reveals a much more grim reality. Their slump shows exhaustion, and frustration seeps out through snide remarks during everyday chatter. Whenever you try to intervene as a supportive companion, they snap back instantly. They fiercely defend the very situation that is wearing them down. It's a common trap, occurring in high-stakes corporate environments and elite sports settings as often as in personal lives. You convince yourself that the pain is simply a necessary hurdle, believing that extra effort will eventually lead to the system finally providing reward. But what happens when that exact unhealthy cycle is broadcast to millions every night, centered around the world's most recognizable basketball star, and you're just looking out for their best interests? Right now, Caitlin Clark is clearly the one trapped within a damaging, draining situation. Her fanbase is acting like that concerned friend, reaching out to check if she's truly doing okay. They're offering a listening ear, asking if she needs support and if things are actually all right in her world. At this moment, the basketball community is assuming the role of the worried best friend, while Caitlin Clark remains deeply ensnared in a harmful cycle. For months, we have observed the official narrative spiral downward. We've endured countless briefings where officials recite perfectly scripted, sanitized talking points. Management keeps preaching patience, insisting the entire framework is tailored to support her. Unique gifts. Yet, the evidence on the court tells a different story, and the metrics confirm it. The vibrancy that defined her collegiate career, that signature boldness from deep, and her intuitive mastery of transition play is being stifled by a rigid, outdated scheme that stubbornly refuses to capitalize on her most devastating skills. The supporters in the stands see it, the pundits dissect it on tape, and deep down, she recognizes the reality too. Admitting this openly would force them to concede that their grand strategy was doomed from the start. It requires breaking rank, stepping out of the role of the compliant subordinate, and demanding the conditions a superstar deserves. We're finally watching that rehearsed, media-friendly mask start to fracture. This friction is no longer just hearsay or locker room gossip. This is where we stand now. Caitlin Clark. She is effectively deceiving herself at this juncture. If she honestly believes she and Stephanie White are inseparable best friends, and that, everything is headed toward a perfect partnership, assuming that after 2 or 3 years, things will naturally improve. Then the 4th season arrives, and it's still the same excuse. It'll get better next year. We're just grinding. Eventually, she has to face the truth. The honeymoon period has officially expired. When a franchise acquires a once-in-a-generation athlete, the immediate magnetism is undeniably electric. It makes headlines. It single-handedly packs out stadiums that were desolate a season ago. However, creating a functional, championship-level culture requires much more than simply securing a marquee name and selling merchandise. It demands a coaching staff with enough self-assurance to hand the reins over to a star and a tactical setup flexible enough to let her innovate, run the floor, and take risks without constantly fearing a trip to the bench. Instead, we're observing a jarring clash of ideologies. You have a player whose basketball DNA is rooted in total creative liberty, high-octane offense, and sharp intuition, being forced into a tedious, half-court, hyper-managed environment that treats her like a fringe player fighting for scraps. It is a catastrophic structural failure. The team fell for the allure of the hype. While the league loves the concept of Caitlin Clark, they remain petrified of actually letting her play her natural game. They are quick to pocket the massive financial gains, yet refuse to relinquish their rigid tactical grip. It appears Clark is finally approaching a definitive breaking point. She is starting to shed the facade and the internal narratives she once clung to. Her resentment is bubbling over, directed squarely at officiating crews and her own coaching staff. Just yesterday, she blatantly ignored Stephanie White, signaling she has reached her limit with her coach. This isn't a one-off. She is clearly exhausted by both White and the team's failing structure. There is a wide, undeniable gap between a star simply dealing with a shooting slump and one staging a mutiny. What we are witnessing is open defiance, as she realizes the current offensive scheme is designed to stifle her. You can only hold your tongue for so long when you see your talents being actively suppressed by the strategy. The carefully curated, bland responses in press conferences are nothing more than a failing defense mechanism. She has put forth a genuine effort to be the model teammate and adhere to the team's rigid philosophy. She has even shouldered the blame for the team's scoring droughts, but the dam has finally burst. Her raw frustration is now visible in every motion, particularly after botched, uninspired play design. You can see the cold, hollow expressions she shoots toward the sideline. The adjustment period narrative is officially dead. The suggestion that she just needs more time to adapt to professional speed no longer holds any water. The true obstacle isn't the skill or intensity of opponents, but the toxicity originating from her own organization. It means so much to me, and we all saw the situation unfold last night. It was plain for everyone to see. Clark got fouled on a play, then completely snapped at the referees. I hadn't realized at the time, but Stephanie White was standing right there in the frame. White was visibly heated, yet her anger stemmed from a completely different source than Clark's. Clark is boiling over because of the lack of officiating protection. So let's analyze this meltdown. A superstar's explosion usually begins with disputed calls from the officials. For someone who understands the game's nuances this deeply, the physical abuse is taxing, but the lack of respect is the trigger. She gets hammered on a play with no whistle, and that is exactly what lights the fuse. Momentum shifts, and the collective aggravation grows by the second. But take a closer look at the sideline interplay. The manager is furious as well, although ostensibly regarding a completely different matter. We're witnessing two separate pockets of resentment, manifesting on the same squad. A generational talent is fighting a solo crusade against the officiating crew, yearning for some form of support. Meanwhile, the coaching leadership appears oblivious to the internal struggles of their brightest star. In a healthy team environment, when a leader confronts the referee with such intensity, the head coach steps in immediately to draw the lift, penalty, handle the repercussions, and stand behind their player. That never happened here. That's personal foul number 5. She's really letting them have it. Yet, credit to the ref, they didn't assess a tech. I mentioned this last night, but it's a milestone moment. It's the first occasion the officials have actually afforded Caitlin Clark the respect of an elite superstar. Escaping a technical foul like that is proof she is finally being viewed as an elite marquee athlete. This was a textbook instance of superstar treatment. The choice not to call a technical is pure star privilege. This particular episode might represent the most revealing snapshot of the entire season. And, amazingly, it doesn't involve a ball passing through a net at all. She unleashes a complete verbal lashing toward the official. By the letter of the rules, in any other scenario with any other athlete, that warrants an instant, automatic technical foul. However, the whistle remained silent. The official chose to look away. For what reason? Because the league recognizes something that her own coaching staff fails to see. The refs understand she is the main attraction driving record-breaking broadcast numbers. They acknowledge the status of a transformative icon. The officiating crew extended her, the kind of leeway usually reserved for a 10-year league veteran, quietly enduring her outburst because they realize the massive commercial value at play. Yet, the coaching staff treats her with far less consideration than the opposing officials. Just reflect on how twisted that dynamic is. The individuals tasked with neutral officiating are granting her elite-level protection, while the people responsible for developing her generational potential are treating her like a rookie who needs to be checked. A brutal lesson delivered there. She's clearly furious. But then Stephanie White decides to pull her from the action. Pardon the visual interference. It's beyond my control. Seriously, looking back at this vintage footage, what is going on? Please, get rid of this screen flicker. Man, seriously, are we even trying? Just kidding, thanks for grabbing the clip. So, Stephanie White is now taking Caitlin Clark out of the lineup. And just like that, Clark obliterates the media desk in a fit of rage. That, right there, is the ultimate sign of disrespect. A humiliating blow to a player who was already hitting her stride. You simply don't bench your primary playmaker when she is red hot. You have to ride that momentum. You capitalize on that intensity to spark a decisive run and break the game wide open. Instead, the coach makes a sudden move. She yanks her from the court, effectively signaling to the entire arena and the national TV audience that the athlete is volatile and requires a forced timeout. It's a condescending, antiquated approach. This coaching style feels like a relic of the 90s, completely out of touch with the modern era of athlete empowerment. The instant fallout is a shattered exterior and a decimated broadcast table. Make no mistake about it. That outburst isn't just about a missed whistle. That physical eruption represents months, even an entire season, of pent-up, stifling frustration finally exploding outward. It's the visible consequence of a senseless minutes cap that offers no logical or competitive advantage. She is livid. She is absolutely incensed because she keeps getting pulled out, even though she fundamentally rejects these constraints on her playing time. She has practically forced herself to accept these limits, and now everything is snapping. We are at the breaking point. The frustration stems from feeling constantly misled by everyone involved. I've been trying to go along with it, but the most painful part of watching a superstar strain to conform to a system that doesn't actually value their input is the pathetic self-denial. We have all seen the rehearsed soundbites and read the sanitized interviews, where she defends these questionable rotations, speaking about trusting the process and staying rested for the closing minutes of the game. It is standard corporate propaganda, and it is draining for any competitor to uphold. You can only recite the official narrative for so long when the reality is this hard. The court's atmosphere suggests a completely different story. Whenever she's pulled from the lineup during a pivotal turn in the game, you can witness her spirit visibly breaking. The fierce athlete inside is in a constant tug-of-war with her public, polished image. Yet, in that precise moment, marching toward the sideline after slamming the table, the athlete ultimately took control. She dropped the facade for the cameras. The composed exterior vanished. Meanwhile, Stephanie White is left standing there, totally ignored. Left hanging, quite literally, just like laundry left out to dry on a line. It's definitive, harsh. It's the same level of awkwardness as Dan Patrick waiting on Kathy Engelbert for that sit down. Totally iced out. You can't unsee something so blatant. In the microscope-like scrutiny of pro sports, body language serves as a crucial metric. That specific exchange effectively bankrupted the coach's authority. The skipper reached out for a standard high five, a simple gesture meant to signal solidarity, an attempt to show that despite the tension, they remain unified. And she gets absolutely snubbed, coldly. Abandoned in front of a packed stadium and a massive television audience. That is never a mistake at this elite professional tier. That is a calculated, intentional move. When a player hits that peak of frustration, they certainly have a narrow field of vision, but they are fully aware of exactly who they are directing their ire toward. By marching past that extended hand without even a fleeting glance, the message was delivered with chilling, absolute precision. It functioned as a public revocation of professional loyalty. You simply don't treat a coach you believe in that way. You don't act like that toward a leader you truly respect. But the part that should really worry management happens moments later. Observe who she actually connects with down the bench. Ignoring the coaches, she walks right past Lanebeer. But then she gives Alicia Gray a solid high five. Look at that. She denies Stephanie, but she acknowledges Alicia Kelly with a slap of the hand. People, you need to focus on the stark contrast occurring here, as this is where the entire story takes a turn. She completely freezes out the head coach with icy indifference. Then, seconds later, enthusiastically engages with assistant coach Austin Kelly. That singular act serves as the undeniable evidence for this whole drama. If she were just blindly livid had this simply been a random, self-contained outburst of frustration, she clearly would have disregarded everyone present. She could have walked directly to the bench, covered her face with a towel, and remained entirely disengaged. However, that isn't how it played out. She chose exactly who to acknowledge and who to ignore. She created a clear distinction between the individual she holds accountable for the team's poor performance and the teammate she feels a genuine connection with on the court. That brief, focused moment reveals everything.